The reason Philippine Olympic Committee or POC election couldn't come at a more crucial juncture, as the Tokyo Olympics is set to resume next year. Many observers believe that this is the best chance for the Philippines to finally win the much evasive first gold medal. And of course, the POC will be highly instrumental in accomplishing the historic feat. One man who will be at the forefront of the mission is a very familiar name, newly elected POC Second Vice President Richard Gomez. Being a former national athlete, he knows exactly what Filipino vets need to be at par with the rest of the world. But of course, it will be easier said than done. He will have to navigate through the systemic issues hounding sports in the Philippines. Can he enact significant changes? How will he sustain respectability? Can he establish a new culture? So many questions for such a daunting task. That's the headline on tonight's Sports Page.
The hottest headlines.
The integral issue.
Who will join the pantheon of the great?
What's the outlook of the future of sports?
The game changers.
The history
The
makers.
stories that make sports eternally compelling.
Open the Sports Page.
Chiki Roapuna, we have had the wonderful opportunity of covering our athletes here and abroad. And one of the athletes that we covered way back in 1997, I hope this does not date all of us here. We had the wonderful opportunity of covering Richard Gomez, who was deep into fencing at the time, and he is now with us as now a sports official as the POC, recently elected POC Second Vice President.
Alam mo, nung 15 years old ako, nagko-cover ako dun sa Jakarta. Ganun eh. Hindi, actually, it seemed like a long time ago, but then we remember it very well because those were good times. We remember Richard as a very devoted national athlete in fencing. And now here we are, congratulating him as second vice president for the Philippine Olympic Committee. Mayor Richard, unang-una, bakit mo ba naisip na tumakbo pa to put something else on your plate? Parang wala kang ginagawa, no? Si Mayor, Congressional House Actor, and Athlete, National Sports Association President, lahat na. Why did you want to do this? And why did you want to commit more time to sports?
Well, I'm because right now I'm president of two NSAs, the Philippine Fencing Association and the Philippine Modern Pentathlon Association. So I'm still very much into sports and helping athletes and hoping that our athletes will be able to achieve being part of the Olympics. So that's really my main goal, being president of these two NSAs. Second, I really want to help out in Philippine sports. Maybe in one way or another, maybe I can help improve our medal standings in the future. So that's the reason why when Bambol Tolentino asked me to run in his tickets, I really said yes right away because I really want to help.
Is it safe to say, Richard, na yung passion mo for this time helping the other athletes because you are not currently training as an athlete, may kinalaman ba yan sa mga experience mo bilang isang Philippine national athlete and the challenges that you know these athletes go through?
Yes, that's really one, and I think with the proper direction and with the proper management, I think we can really achieve good heights in Philippine sports. Malakas talaga tayong mga Philippine athletes, but kailangan talaga maganda yung guiding light natin, maganda yung program na binibigyan natin sa mga athletes.
Okay, my turn. Richard, 2 years ago, we were together again in Jakarta as you were the chef de mission of our Asian Games team that time. And ano ba difference ng first and second vice president sa POC? Ano ang difference ng trabaho nyo?
Depende ko ano yung pag-uusapan sa board. Usually, yung iba ginagawa, in the past, yung ginagawa ng first saka second vice president, internal saka external, no, na mga gawain. But I don't know, siguro pag nag-meet kami, before the turnover, we'll see what's going to be the direction of Bambol Tolentino.
Okay. Kung ikaw may sariling agenda as in your new position, anong mga gusto mo i-address as a former national athlete, sports official now? What's your foremost concern? Mga 1, 2, 3, Richard.
Well, number one, what's really very important is yung condition ng athletes natin, what their needs are. Primarily, that is very important. Second, we have to take a look at the training programs of our NSAs. If they're really doing if the officials of the NSAs are really doing the work and improving the performance of our athletes. And then third is really coordinating with the PSC and hoping that the PSC will be able to give funding to our NSAs and to our athletes.
Napapag-usapan yan kung ano yung difficulties ng relationship ng POC at ng PSC. As you mentioned, you are the president of 2 NSAs, so you have to constantly deal with this tug of war. What do you think are solutions towards that end? Paano ba mapapaganda ang relationship or ang synthesis ng POC and PSC for the benefit of Philippine sports?
Well, ako kasi my style is really, I'm very diplomatic when it comes to relationships, especially with the POC and the PSC. And I think in the case of our leader si Bambo Tolentino, I think he's very diplomatic and he has very good relationship with the chairman of PSCC, Butch Ramirez. So I'm hoping that this will be a smooth transition, and then I am really hoping that the PSC will work hand in hand with the POC.
This is going to be fun. Both of you are into politics. Chiki, of course, has been congresswoman, and you're amazing now in late. And now, do you think that advantage yun, Richard Goman, yung politics and then going into sports? Meron bang pagkakaiba o talagang kasama ang politics sa sports talaga?
Well, in sports, there is politics, no? It's really a matter of building relationships and making things work. And in the case of sila Chiki, when she was a congresswoman, they really know how to help out yung Philippine sports in terms of funding sa PSC. And then ako naman as mayor, my concern is really more on local, no, on how to help our athletes in our locality. That's why right now I'm housing the 2 NSAs in Ormoc City, the Modern Pentathlon and the Philippine Fencing Association. So our fencers are now training in Ormoc City kasi bawal mag-training dito sa Manila. Yung mga facilities dito are closed.
Mm-hmm. Oh. And level up mo na Goma yung di ba, yung coaching ng Philippine fencing global na ang dating, di ba? Tell us about the situation in fencing now, just briefly.
Our IFs have their own programs, especially na online na yung mga activities. So, ang dami ng mga ganon online coaching, online teaching, even online fencing, even online competitions, marami na. In fact, our athletes have won in modern pentathlon. We've won about 3 medals already in international online competitions. Kasi there are a lot of events in modern pentathlon that are measurable. Like the running event, the shooting event are all measurable, and the swimming events.
Of course, for those who are uninitiated, fencing is part of pentathlon, di ba? That's
yes.
the from shooting. Itong lahat ng mga sports na ginawa ni Goma, nandun sa pentathlon. Ewan ko kung do you do the swim, bike, run still, but I know that you were a shooter and also a fencer. But fencing, I know, has high hopes for the Olympics, and I think that's what we're looking at now. Yung mga Olympic hopefuls, they are not a few. Marami tayong inaasahan, and just maybe in Tokyo we get that elusive gold. What do you think?
It's quite difficult kasi medyo sa totoo lang naiiwanan ng konti yung training natin. That's the reason why I had to bring our fencers to Ormoc City, because in Manila, here in Manila, all they were doing was just calisthenics, stretching, workout. In fencing, just like contact sports and boxing, kailangan meron kang sparring. Dapat may tao ang kalaban all the time. You cannot just play alone with fencing. So that's the reason why I brought them there, because at least in Ormoc City, the environment is controlled. I'm able to watch over the athletes on how they train, at saka yung mga tao na pumupunta doon. So they're able to do what they need to do in terms of training.
Pero unique si Goma, ang kanyang pentathlon approach, may volleyball spike, may golf swing, and all the other sports that played. We have covered him sa volleyball na rin. You and all three of us are veterans also of the Star Olympics. You remember what we came from also. We know that the POC has struggled with its image and credibility in recent years because of the same old issues. When we return with Richard Gomez, we'll talk about the question, how can the new leadership that has been recently elected get rid of those old presumptions? That's more when we return here in Sports Flash.
The Philippines hosting the SEA Games again very soon? If you ask POC President Mambo Tolentino, that is the dream. The newly re-elected chief recently said he is offering the country to serve as venue of the biennial meet once again if there are nations who will waive their right to host. And that is even if it's not yet the Philippines' turn in the rotation. He said that he is confident that the country can duplicate the accomplishments made in last year's SEA Games with the world-class facilities at New Clark City in Tarlac. Vietnam is set to host the SEA Games next year, with Cambodia, Thailand, and Brunei slated next in the following years. The Philippines, capitalizing on home court advantage, finished first among all the 11 participating nations in last year's biennial contest with a 387-medal haul, including 149 gold medals. 530 events in 56 sports were held, making it the largest edition of the SEA Games ever.
And we are back here on Sports Page, still talking to Second Vice President of the POC, Mayor Richard Gomez, actor, athlete, father, and husband, congressional spouse, lahat na, no? Richard, I vowed I will, because we are friends, I will make lakas loob. I will ask you the difficult questions that people often ask. Is there corruption in the PSC?
There can be if they want to. Kasi you're talking about public funds. Actually, any office that handles public funds, there's always a possibility of graft and corruption. That's why it's very important. That's why it's very important to choose who the people you want to put in government, especially appointed positions. Important talaga yon. You have to check on number one, their personality, their background, their history, what kind of people they are, where they come from. Importante yung mga background check.
What are the things that we can do to kahit paano to lessen? Kasi sabi mo nga, it's a system. It's very hard to change the system overnight. But I guess if we look at the individual and how they deal with their specific sports, is that a good place to start?
It really begins with the people that you put in government. Pinaka-importante talaga yan. The people running the department. No? And then, that's why yung government, ang dami nilang firewalls, ang dami nilang ng procedures before, let's say for example, for procurement, ang dami nilang steps bago ka maka-purchase sa government because marami silang safeguards na nilalagay to prevent officials from using public funds the wrong way.
Okay.
Pero the balance, Goma, just let me ask this one more question, Sir. You talk about all of these procedures, all of the red tape, the bureaucracy, which you feel on the one hand is necessary, pero sa kabilang dako, hindi ba naaantala ang development ng athletes, all the time that it takes to get us at par with our neighboring countries? That gets in the way. All of the
yes, that's very true. Because of too many safeguards, bumabagal yung procedures. No, in effect, it slows down a lot of processes, especially when it comes to releasing of funds na kailangan kaagad ng athletes. And then one of the problems that we've encountered in so many years in government, like say for example sa PSC in the past. There are invitations for athletes to compete in different countries, and then biglang magre-request ka ng funding. They'll say yes, pero pag umalis na yung athletes dati, wala pa yung ticket, wala pa yung allowances nila. So that's really very difficult for the athletes and for the NSAs. That's why, again, it really depends on the leadership that we put inside these government offices.
Richard, there are mixed emotions about sports officials, and one issue is credibility. What are your thoughts, and how do you think can that credibility be regained with the new board and the new officers coming out of the POC?
Well, the credibility can be regained by way of showing the performance of your NSA, by how you train and make your athletes perform well in competitions. Yun talaga yun lang yung yun lang yung scorecard mo dun eh. How are your athletes performing, and how are you able to develop the sport?
Okay. What do you know now that athletes younger than all of us do not understand about how government and how sports associations work? Anong pinaka hindi magets ng mga athlete? Kaya naiinis kuminsan ng mga athlete, Richard?
Siguro nakikita lang before kasi when we were young, nakikita lang namin yung ina-announce ng government na the let's say for example the PSC before, yung PSC has let's say 1 billion funding for next year. And then magtataka kung 1 billion yun, bakit yung sweldo namin ay nahuhuli? Laging ganun yung iniisip ng athletes kasi hindi nakikita ng athletes lahat ng process nun, lahat ng mga sinusuporta ng programa, lahat ng mga infrastructure na pinapatay yun lahat, saka yung mga mini-maintain nila, maraming hindi nakikita yung athletes. But so it's very important for the NSAs also to explain to the athletes this processes, how it works and how it goes. That's why kami sa fencing and sa modern pentathlon, we tell them that, these are the funds that we need for 1 year. Pag dumating itong pondo na ito yung mga magagawa natin. So pag inaprubahan ng PSC itong programa na to, tuloy tayo. Pag hindi tayo matutuloy. So basically, it's how you explain to the athletes.
Alam mo, Chiki, Richard has done some great things with the health protocols in Ormoc. I'm very optimistic about what GOMA will do for sports, actually.
Yes, and another thing I was thinking about as Richard was explaining all of these challenges, laki rin ng bagay ng contribution ng private sector, diba? I mean, I'm thinking about the MVP Foundation, that of course, Vice President Al Panlilio. Talk about, Richard, the kind of support and the impact that the private sector can make on the development of sports.
Oh, malaki. In 1998, when we were preparing for the Atlanta Olympics, I was working for President Erap at the time, and with the help of the president, and he made me a presidential advisor in youth and sports at the time. So I had I was given the authority to talk to different corporations and solicit funds for the POC. And at the time, sila Sito Derit pa yung nasa POC. So we were able to raise a lot of funds for our hopeful Olympians, no? And doon pumasok yung Petron, PLDT was there, and maraming corporations na pumasok. So ang laking bagay ng corporate funding to an NSA, because it really augments a lot of expenses being incurred by the NSAs. No? Aside from the funding na nakukuha ng mga NSAs sa PSC, so the additional fundings is for additional training and could be for additional travels for athletes to compete in different competitions.
Let's see what we can look forward to since tuloy na nga ang Tokyo Olympics in 2021 when Sports Page comes out.
For tonight's That's What They Said, we asked, what is the biggest concern of Philippine sports? Nikki Hosaka says, we don't have proper grassroots programs. We tend to fund athletes when they already have certain accolades or garner media mileage. A pyramid format for all professional leagues would also be beneficial. From Fretzi Tortor, lack of facilities in areas that need development like the province, not knowing that there are potential athletes who need support from the government. At Odd Future, corruption. The problem's not the budget, but how the higher-ups handle the money. Jervis Laranio says, politics. Nandun yung support ng government pero ang dami pang dinadaanan ng pondo tapos lahat ng dadaanan may kickback. Palakasan system na lang din minsan. At JCRSM 2195, kapag ang sports organizations ay pinamumunuan ng mga politiko at hindi mga sportsman.
And we are back here on Sports Page, still talking to Second Vice President of the POC, Richard Gomez. Natis na natin kanina, Gomes, yung Tokyo Olympics. Eto na, talagang mangyayari na. It was such a disappointment that we didn't have it this year. But you feel our athletes are back on track? I mean, in spite of the 8 months that we had to give away because of the pandemic?
Actually, not really. Not all sports are able to physically train in their own venues, and ang hirap. We really have to make a lot of adjustments. Some athletes are trying to leave the country and train abroad. No, some other athletes, they want to train abroad, but they lack the financial capability. And then some are trying to adapt. So in this time of pandemic, you really have to adjust and adapt. No, but sometimes, the end result of that is not really nice. Swerte lang siguro pag pag naging maganda yung performance mo on the day of your event during the Olympics. But you really have to properly train. Venue, sparring partner, weight training, coaching, everything.
And hindi lang yan, not just towards the Olympics, but just the growth of sports in general. A question that some of the NSAs might have, and I don't know if it's a legitimate question, but you might as well address it, Richard, because the BSP and the pentathlon NSA, fencing, cycling, these are the NSAs that the officers represent.
Yes.
Dapat bang mangamba yung mga ibang sports na parang teka muna baka maiwan tayo, hindi tayo mapansin dahil nga yung ating mga leaders, syempre alagaan nila yung kanilang mga NSA.
In the POC, we make sure that the training programs are at par, no, with the international standards. And then second, it is the POC that gives accreditation to the NSAs when they compete in different competitions. So hindi sila may iwanan in terms of kung yung mga members ng POC are handling NSA. So, ganun talaga yun. Ang difference kasi ng POC sa PSC, yung PSC kasi sila yung funding arm of the government, no? And if POC would be the funding arm, then it's a totally different story.
Richard, would you encourage athletes in general to speak up on the issues that affect sports? Kasi kung minsan, pag yung athlete masyadong aggressive, masyadong vocal, medyo nagpa-frown yung ating mga sports leaders who probably and most likely are older than the athlete. Would you encourage athletes to speak out their minds during your term?
Well, we live in a democratic country, and people are free to say what they think and what they feel. Kaya lang, as an athlete, it would be much better if you'll focus on your event, and then ilayo mo talaga yung pagka-atleta mo dun sa pagka-politika. Let the problems of sports let it be taken up by the leaders of your own association, and let the government help POC and the NSA settle their problems. So yung mga athletes, my recommendation is coming from one, that while you are an athlete, focus on what you do best, which is winning.
Kung merong cultural change sa ating sporting ways of doing things, anong masasuggest mong pagbabago sa kultura natin? Because you have international exposure, you've competed abroad, you've seen how other countries have done it, and you know what you're talking about. Ano kaya ang cultural changes natin for sports?
Well, what is really more important nowadays is really focus on what the athletes need, no? Sports science, proper coaching, nutrition, facilities, equipment. Yun lang namin hinahanap ng mga athletes If you'll be able to give that to them, I doubt it kung magrereklamo pa sila. When they feel comfortable, when they feel that they're being taken care of, and then they're able to perform well, hindi sila magrereklamo. Sabihin na, sige, wala kami reklamo. Kung may problema man sa Philippine sports, let the leadership do that.
Do you still feel that there's still an overemphasis on basketball, and we have to distribute our attention to the other sports?
Well, there's nothing we can do about it, Seb and Chiki, because basketball is really the number one sports in the country. So kahit sa kalsada kang magpunta, may makikita kang basketball court, and then volleyball is the number 2 played sports in the country. So ganun talaga, mahirap to compete with the big ones. Ang isipin na lang natin that it's very important for the leaders of the NSAs to really lobby for funding for their own NSAs, and then use the money properly pag meron sila nakuha na funding for their athletes, that they'll be able to compete abroad, that they'll be able to get good coaches, and that they'll be able to train well.
Two sports that Richard plays very well also, basketball and volleyball. Chiki, yung parting questions natin siguro sa'yo na.
Sige, let's go a little personal before we end. Una-una, tanong ko si Richard, I know that Juliana is getting her feet wet already in volleyball. Medyo naantala lang because of COVID. Would you want Juliana, your daughter, to be a national athlete? Do you want that?
Yeah, of course, definitely. In fact, the development na nangyari kay Juliana, she's playing for, she's in the roster for UP varsity volleyball, no? Pero because of COVID, since February, they're not able to play the sport. And then nasa province lahat ng mga players. So I told her, while she's in Ormoc, bumalik ka na lang sa fencing because when she was young, she was really a fencer. And she was already competing. Sabi ko, balikan mo na lang ito. And then talk to the varsity department and tell them that you're moving to fencing. Sabi ko, pabayaan mo na yung volleyball, hayaan mo na yan. Marami na nagba-volleyball dyan. Mag-move ka na lang sa fencing. I think you'll be a better fencer than a volleyball player. Tapos, yun, nakinig naman siya. So, every day she would train with the national team and she's getting better. She's getting there. Hopefully, if my dream is for her to become a national athlete, it will really depend on how she will perform and how she'll enter the rankings. Kasi sa fencing at sa modern pentathlon, meron kaming ranking system eh. Mahirap yung palakasan system. That is what breaks the athletes, yung palakasan system. So what we do, every month there's a competition and then you get your national points in that competition. Eventually, that ranking you get, yun yung magdadala sa national team.
Alam mo, Sam, makinig ka kay Richard pag-usapan si Juliana. Matatanong mo tuloy, ano ba talaga ang paboritong role nitong taong to who has so many hats to wear? Is it being a mayor or a NSA official, POC vice president, an actor, an artist, ano pa ba? Nagluluto, lahat na. Or is it being a husband and doting father to his beautiful daughter? Which is it, Richard?
Well, first and foremost, really being a father to Juliana and being a husband to Lucy. But the others, they all come secondary. First, always family. No, I'm able to do all these things because of proper time management. I allow full time on things that I do. If I'm a mayor on this day, I'm full-time mayor, 100%. If I have to be a sports leader in this time, I do that 100%. So, kailangan gano'n eh. Ever since I was a student, I was an actor, I was a national player. So I had three big things doing all ongoing at the same time. So proper time management I learned that at a very early age, at a very young age.
Gomes, we wish we had 3 hours to talk to you about your many pursuits. But thanks so much for giving us the time. And once again, congratulations to you on your win as second vice president.
Thank you, Kong Chiki. Thank you, Sev. It's nice seeing you again. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And now we will go into our last look. We'll be counting the days when the Tokyo Olympics finally opens its curtains next year. And as that date draws closer and closer, the pressure mounts more and more for the Philippine Olympic Committee. The country's first ever gold medal in the biennial meet is ripe for the taking, and it's up to our sports officials to steer and guide our national athletes towards success. The mission doesn't end there, in fact. It could only mean the start. Continuity and integrity will be very important in the hopes of regaining respectability and credibility from the public who have seen the ills and problems of Philippine sports. Malalim talaga ang mga problema. But I know and I can sense the optimism that Richard Gomez and his new team, which he is a part of, are bringing into the table. But then again, no other recourse but to keep on believing that there are still people like Richard who are genuinely concerned about the cause of our national athletes. In behalf of Chiki, Roa Puno, and Richard Gomez, thank you for joining us. This has been your Sports Page.